This is not a real piano.
I've been producing in a home studio now for over 4 years, and I can safely say that one of the absolute hardest things to do is to replicate the sound of real instruments using virtual instruments. In this video, I'm going to show you a top secret technique that I've been developing for 4 years to get the most realistic sounding MIDI pianos, and I guarantee that you've never tried this before. Now let me tell you exactly what kind of situation that this technique is for. If you write songs that are like primarily piano based and you want the main focus of your track to be the piano, but you have a home studio and you probably don't have an upright or a grand piano sitting around. Instead, you have one of these things. You have a MIDI keyboard. This is my method of optimizing that MIDI keyboard to get the most realistic piano sound possible. That goes beyond the possibilities of just what a simple piano VST can do. So if you just draw in MIDI onto your piano roll, that's cool. There's a lot of videos out there that detail ways to use humanization and velocity, automation, and all that to make that stuff sound real, but that's not really what this video is geared towards. This is for if you play a piano part on a MIDI instrument and you want to make that MIDI instrument sound as realistic as possible. I have a technique that I genuinely think sounds as good, if not better, than most recordings of real upright or grand pianos. This technique won't just get you the one sound that I'm going to show you here. This is a method that you can adapt to any kind of piano tone you want. So here's what you're going to see in this video. I'm going to divide this up into 3 big steps. First, there's the actual sound selection of the pianos, and yes, pianos, we're not just using one VST. The second is a little special recording trick that I use that I guarantee that you have not used before. And the third is the way that all the pianos are processed and mixed. So step 1, don't just use one piano VST. When a real piano is recorded in a real space, there isn't just one microphone recording it. There will often be a microphone or two in the body of the piano. There'll be a microphone that's kind of closer to the keys, maybe hovering over the performer. And then usually there'll be a room mic as well, and you could add others depending on where you're recording, what the situation is. The point being, there's at least 3 different microphones, and because of where those microphones are placed, each one is going to be capturing a very different tone. The microphone inside the piano is going to be very bright sounding, whereas the microphone that is really far away, the room mic, is going to have a much more dull, spacious sound. And then usually in a mix, those different signals are processed and they're panned around the stereo space to give this really textured, layered, full kind of sound. So you can replicate that with VSTs by using 2 or more different sounding piano emulations. In this project, I used 3. Let me show you those layers. So here's my DAW session for the project, and as you can see, it's a mixture of MIDI and audio. If this looks daunting, don't worry, I'm going to break it down step by step. So here's the thing, right? Most people, when they use a piano VST, they use a piano VST. And that's it. And well, that's the first step to this process. So in this session, that's called Piano C, or like Central Piano. I'm using this VST called Postfelt by John Mayer. I really recommend this. I use it in most, if not all, of my productions now that have a piano part. I really like the sound of felt pianos, or felt piano VSTs in general. To me, they just sound a bit more layered and interesting and realistic. But as good as this VST is on its own, it doesn't quite have the same vibe. Here it is just on its own. So sounds nice, sounds good. There's a few little instances in there where you probably hear kind of odd phrasings that come about of just MIDI being weird. I don't know how to describe it better. But most importantly, there just isn't really a sense of space. So there's 2 other piano layers. I'll start by isolating each one so you can hear just how different they are.
Hi, this is Editing Lucas. I realize this is not super clear, but I've just copied the MIDI over from the central piano. So I played it once, and then I copied it over onto the 2 other MIDI tracks. That's how I got the exact same thing playing in the 3 pianos.
This is the left piano, and it's using this contact instrument called the Gentleman. It's definitely not the only VST that can do this job. It's just one that I have in my library, but you could definitely replace this with a free VST for sure. So here's that on its own. So as you can hear, it's a very bright tone. I've done that here. There's this soft hard controller. And a lot of VSTs, or when you're working with free stuff, the way you'll do that is just by increasing the velocity of the notes a bit. Every DAW has a piano roll like this, and at the bottom here, these are the velocities of the notes. Now, I would say typically when people do MIDI pianos, their velocities are too high. MIDI pianos, to me, usually sound too bright, but if you're going for a bright tone like I am in this left-sided piano, because that's emulating the piano that's like, or the microphone that's like inside the piano, then I'll increase my velocity a fair bit, or modify the tone knob on my VST, as the case may be. Both of those will end up doing the same thing roughly. And lastly, my right piano is completely free. This is from Spitfire Audio's Labs. This is like the famous soft piano. I think this is like the most used piano VST ever. It's got a wonderful, delicate sound. Here's what that sounds like. So in comparison, really, really distant. Here's just the left and right pianos together. So huge contrast. Just imagine that's like we have the mic that's inside the piano, and then we have a room mic, and we've taken those signals and we've panned them left and right. That's essentially what we're doing there. And then this is kind of the main body mic in the center, and here are these three together. So step number 2, and I've never seen anyone do this, so I don't know if I can patent this technique, but I'm just sharing it with you right now. This is like my thing. So I actually first realized this when I was working on this little piano song that I'd written. And basically the first time I had this piano idea, I just recorded it as a voice memo on my phone. So I was playing it on this keyboard, and there was audio coming out of my speakers, and my phone was capturing that audio from my speakers. And then I was away from the studio for a few weeks, and I was listening to that voice memo over and over again, and it was very atmospheric and vibey, and I actually really liked the sound of the voice memo. Then I came back to the studio and I kept working on it, and as much as I tried to get the perfect piano tone, I was even using that technique of layering multiple VSTs together, I still just wasn't getting a sense of space and vibe that I was feeling from before. So I literally turned up the volume on my monitors, and I sat back with my phone and just recorded the sound of the audio playing from my phone. I imported that into my session, and boom, that became my room mic. It adds some real, genuine noise to the recording, and it also just gives a sense of space. My room is by no means perfectly treated, but honestly, I think that's for the best, because what we're doing with this voice memo is we're actually just trying to add as many imperfections back to the sound as possible. Here's what my room mic sounds like. So as you can hear, it does have a lot of noise. It sounds very distant, but it just has a real sense of space. And yeah, it doesn't sound perfect, because at the end of the day, it is a phone. But if you layer it in with the other stuff, it kind of blends in there really nicely, and it gets you that sense of space without sacrificing the, the quality and the pristine kind of sound of the VSTs. But then I wanted to take it one step further, because almost any piano recording has a little bit of shuffling from the performer, and most notably, I would say the clicks of the keyboard, and even maybe like the sustain pedal being released. And some VSTs have emulations of that, but to me, they're never convincing. So what I did was I took my phone, I propped it on my music stand back there, and I just had the audio of this song playing in my headphones and then played along. But all you could hear coming through the phone was just the clicks of the keyboard and my breathing and shuffling in my chair. So it's essentially an isolated stem of all of those little noises. And here are the piano clicks. Now you'll notice that sounds a little bit weird. I've done some processing on this just to fit this in the kind of mix that I was going for here. As you can see, I've done my usual high pass filter, but I've also done a low pass filter, taking out everything above like what, 3.5K. So yeah, those keyboard clicks are just popping out way too much for me, specifically in the high end. So I rolled that off, and you can hear in the final thing that it definitely still has the desired effect. I had some isolated reverb on there, but I think I took that off. And then lastly, I have some stereoization, so just to make the clicks sound a bit wider. Now just to last look at some other processing. So I've done some light EQ changes on specific tracks. So this is the room mic from my phone, and I've cut out a little bit of the low mids, and I've also just done a slight high shelf filter. Anything above, again, yeah, that 3.5K kind of range. My right and central piano also have little EQ curves. These were just based on what I was hearing for this specific kind of sound. They definitely all have a high pass filter that's pretty important. There's definitely always rumble in pianos. And actually a bit of stereoization here on the central piano as well, which I don't know, I don't usually do that, but yeah, whatever. On the bus I have this SSL channel strip, which I had, I started with this piano preset, but I modified, I think, the highs and the high mids because it was sounding a little harsh for the sound that I was going for. This is just a combination of EQ and compression, and it's just a really nice way to dial in a kind of tone that you're looking for. Also, this 2BQ plugin, it's doing a slight narrow cut in the lows and a slightly wider, larger boost of the same frequencies there, and then it's boosting a little bit of highs and not really cutting it much. This plugin's completely free, by the way, and it's awesome, so check it out. Warmy EP1A. This is a little less important, but I have this EQ that automates in here that takes out a bit of low mids only when the vocals come in. It was just to clear up space in the mix of this particular song. And then I have the piano bus sidechained to a reverb send. So here I have my favorite reverb of all time, Raum. This is using the Warm Keys preset. And as always, when you do a reverb send, you set the mix to 100%. And the way it's blended is through, you know, how much side chaining you're doing. This reverb has an Abbey Road EQ under it, which just means that you do a low shelf and a high shelf, taking out all of the frequencies except for the mids. It just really, really cleans up the sound of a reverb. And then lastly, again, some stereoization on that. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Let me play you some of it. So if you found this technique helpful and you want to learn more of these kinds of little tricks, then I got something for you. The first link in the description is a download link to a completely free PDF that I put together. It details this method that I just showed in this video, all written out in really easy to follow steps. And it also details a similar technique for how to get a realistic MIDI drum sound. And then finally, it has my secret technique to layer MIDI strings to sound as realistic as possible. So completely free download, showing you 3 techniques in detail that I use to get extremely realistic sounding MIDI. These are some of my biggest secrets, and I'm giving them away for free, so don't miss out. Go check it out in the description. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful. If you did enjoy it, leave it a like, a comment, to subscribe, ring the bell. I think that's another thing that YouTubers say. I don't know, and I just wanted to give you guys all huge thank you for following along and supporting me. I got some recreation videos coming soon. If you haven't seen the 2 that I've done already, then go check them out, and I'll see you next time. Peace.